We're heading into the home stretch with what should be a really interesting panel, lifestyle and entertainment. So now we're going to welcome onto the stage, moderating, Mike Isaac, senior editor at All Things Digital, Tony Espinoza, CEO of Couchsurfing, Mark Gray, co-founder and CEO of Squirrel, Mark Leibowitz, vice president of business development and marketing at StumbleUpon, and Dan Taree, co-founder, president, and COO of Ticketfly. Come on up, guys.
Thanks, Casey. All right, so we are here to talk to you today about Jesus. Just kidding. This is like a really eclectic mix of people, right? So it's like a lifestyle and entertainment panel, but basically everyone here does something a little bit different. And I think the first question I had was just the concept of the vertical versus this sort of all-encompassing place where users can go and discover new things, right? So we have Couchsurfing here, who essentially lets you find different places to crash, right, on the internet, and then we have something like StumbleUpon, where you literally stumble upon all different types of things. Do you think that having this sort of, Tony, I'll start with you. Do you think like having this sort of like very focused destination point for finding different stuff, you know, gives you sort of a strength against something that where you just sort of like walk in and say, show me new cool things?
I think it's a good question. When I looked at Couchsurfing as a company, the thing that blew my mind was that at first I thought it was a place where you would find some place to crash. And the reason it became vertical for me very quickly is that I found out that in any given month, the people that use Couchsurfing are so into it that they send about they generate about 100+ million messages a month. In other words, people were there to find other people. And so I think when it comes to being able to find somebody in any country, there really is a need for there to be a place to go to do just that.
Sure. Well, Mark, what do you think? I mean, go
So
there are two Marks here, by the way, but
just
let's go with this one.
Keep you on your toes. We're laser focused on video. Video, is a very specific media type. How we engage with video is very specific. It's different than a photo or text. I mean, we've heard from some people who are working on recommendations around, what you should read. We've heard recommendations around music from Pandora. And each one of these media types have certain nuances to them that are challenges in themselves. And the way we consume them and the way we might share them are different. And they have different considerations. So we absolutely believe that you have to have that kind of laser-like focus around video to be successful, for us to make sure that you get to videos that you actually care about and that you want to see. I can't be recommending, this photo or this other piece of text that you might read. When and how we consume media is very, very different. Sure. So for us to have an experience, we needed to say, okay, we're going to lead with video. And we're also incredibly passionate about video. That's what I like. So,
well, okay, so there's that, the sort of super focus. And Mark, number two, I think you have sort of a...
You're not number
or number
two.
one. I mean, I'm not really picking.
Number two is actually a promotion for me.
All right, there you go. Self-deprecating.
I agree that it's a great question, if only because, as some of my colleagues who are here in the room with me would confirm, we spent a lot of time at StumbleUpon talking about this and thinking about it. I actually do agree with my panelists here that there are nuances to each specific content type or industry that I think makes for a better experience, at least today, with a verticalized type discovery experience. Now that said, I think what we're all about at StumbleUpon, finding the right content at the right time for the right person. And we're a long ways at StumbleUpon from being able to do that. And I think really no one can claim to do that effectively today. But that is our long-term audacious goal. I think what we found as we've dipped our toe into looking at other verticals that either we ourselves have thought are particularly interesting or others have come to us and said, hey, can you help us do discovery in apps or products or places? And the list goes on. I think as we've looked more into each of those, we've figured out that there are a lot of nuances to doing those things well, and we don't really even do the broad-based discovery well. So That's probably a non-answer, which I'm particularly good at. But it's just to say I agree that I think there is a lot to be said for verticalized experiences, but there's also a lot of learning that can be had from doing a broad-based horizontal experience.
Well, I mean, look at. I think of Facebook as like the main example. Like they have this app center that is opening up now, right? So the idea is that you start discovering things instead of going to things on the web. You go into Facebook, right? And then it becomes your sort of destination to find all this different stuff because you see what your friends are doing, things like that. How much of a driver do you see that as being to your business in the future? And that's open.
I'll jump in.
Mark,
actually,
number 2.
So I think actually that's a great example of something that I feel like we've learned in doing sort of broad-based discovery, which is there's a time and a place where social connections matter, and there are many times and places where they actually don't. The challenge is to figure out when it does matter and when it doesn't. I know that at StumbleUpon, there is a group of users that is a minority, albeit a vocal minority, who really wants social influences to drive their recommendations. But there's a larger majority, albeit less vocal, who we see it in our own data, responds very negatively to social recommendations. So they're not interested in seeing what their connections on Facebook or other social platforms are interested in because that's not a good proxy for what their personal predilections are. And so they're more interested in things like like-mindedness and personal viewing history and how that should influence going forward recommendations.
Yeah, I think Facebook's an important place. You need to be there. There's 900 million people there. They have a great social graph. We learn a lot from integrating with Facebook. At the same time, inside of Squirrel, we kind of talk about it as having both a single-player mode and sort of like a multiplayer mode, although we don't have gamification or anything going inside of Squirrel. But the notion that...
Can I just say that I hate the word gamification?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. We don't
So I'm glad
employ any gaming or gaming tricks inside of Squirrel. But we have that notion that
so Mike, you're not against fun.
You don't have to be there with all your friends. You can come into Squirrel and it can be a personalized experience. I can just get recommendations for videos that I care about, and I don't necessarily need to get feedback from my friends. If I want to, I can bring them on. I can look at their activity. I can discover video through my friends or through people that I respect or follow that might have similar interests, and that's a great way to discover video. But at the same time, you need to allow for an experience that sits outside of that, especially when it comes to video. And it's important around video, too, because I think it was talked about earlier around the guilty pleasures. That definitely is the case with video. I mean, people want to watch certain videos, and they don't want all their friends to know about those videos that they just watched. They definitely want to watch these videos. They watch them over and over again, but they don't want you to know that they're watching those videos.
That's what incognito mode is for.
Right. So we have a privacy switch. You turn that off. Your activity is private, and you're allowed to watch those videos.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say on the vertical, what verticals lend themselves to kind of blowing out more discovery tools. Everyone thinks music is. And music, at Ticketfly, we focus a lot on music, helping music promoters connect with fans and then fans connecting with each other. So we see our platform as much more of an enablement platform. We're not a destination. I think in the future we'll make more and more investments in personalization algorithms that will serve up actively recommended stuff. But I've heard, I forgot what blog post I was reading, but I was reading a blog post where there was a stat where a lot of people are listening to strangers' playlists, not even their own friends' playlist. So one wonders how important is watching what your friends are doing and influencing you versus reaching outside of your own network to respected, maybe not even respected, but even strangers that are running their own playlist that I just stumbled upon. So,
and, the thing with
so to speak,
Facebook too. Again,
we just met today, so.
The thing with Facebook, I mean, there's other places also to receive social signals. I know that might seem shocking, but it is the case. And for us in video, we have hundreds of different providers that we monitor. Some of those providers are really curators of video. There are people behind these sites that curate really cool video. And they map to our users' interests. So we want to make sure that we're pulling in that. I mean, that's a certain expertise around video that we want to include, and it's part of that social engagement with these communities. But it's not necessarily just your friends that sit on a Facebook. There's other communities that that are offering up a really strong positive signal for your product.
In these scenarios, I tend to be the one that rocks the boat a little bit, which
Go
is
for it.
Rocket.
There's one fundamental problem with the whole situation with Facebook, and it's inherently kind of coordinated with its strength, which is that people spend way too much time in there not creating any actual value. And then we try to suck value out of it, analyzing the graph and inferences upon inferences. There are things Facebook's good at, there are things Facebook's not good at. One thing we all know it's not great at here at the Social Discovery Conference, it's not a great way to discover strangers. It's not a great way to connect with people you don't actually know, especially if they're really different from you, like in another country. So Couchsurfing is a very different model, and it's been around as forever. But the amazing thing about it is that it hasn't grown up with Facebook or Google's SEO or any of those other things. It's genuinely grown up around people in 230 countries using a service because when people travel, they're in a fundamentally different state of mind. It's the question you asked earlier, is there a need for verticals? Well, when I'm traveling, I have sort of different needs. And there's times when I'm also at home, and even though I just travel a short distance, I'm traveling. I don't know where I am anymore. I don't know what I should do or where I should go. Right. And the missing link from all of the Lonely Planet guides is that I don't know who to do these things with. All this good stuff, but who do I do that stuff with? And that's kind of where we found very little value relative to trying to use Facebook to figure that out, because the best thing to do so far has been to actually put real people together to go do things. And so that's where social discovery fits in. We just launched the first iPhone app for Couchsurfing today, and it's going to enable you to make those connections.
So, okay, you just gave me a few ideas. But I think the interesting part of what you were saying is that, like, I can find strangers that I don't necessarily know, right? But that's still sort of predicated around intent, right? Like, so I have an activity to do. I need a place to sleep.
Context.
Right? So that is the reason that I actually want to meet someone. Whereas, like, maybe another service might just be like, hey, you want to meet a stranger because whatever, So, I mean, that's important, right?
Right. I mean, the majority of the activity and the deep engagement that happens on Couchsurfing is not around places to sleep. It's actually around the fact that in any major city anywhere in the world, you can find a Couchsurfing meetup that happens every week. And I don't know if you've ever seen Critical Mass in San Francisco, but it's this thing. Go to Istanbul, you will see it. 330 people descending on a cafe and taking over it with the Couchsurfing banner. This is what happens across the world. And it's the grassroots component of what actually makes the whole system work.
So you also mentioned that you're launching an iPhone app, right? So I think that it's like a foregone conclusion that you have to have a mobile strategy today, right? Like everyone sort of says that. And like I'm just sort of skeptical. Like some websites or some services, right, don't necessarily make sense for me to use on my phone, right? And I just sort of want to see where you guys stand on that. Like, do you think it's like, do you have to have it there? Do you need to find that sort of thing, or?
Just to finish the loop on Couchsurfing, for us, it's a critical piece of the component, right, of the whole equation. It gives you the context to know where you are. I can literally pull it up and say, I want to go see the Eiffel Tower. Who else wants to go see that with me today? Who's available? Remember, travel's a state of mind, so you're open to it. You're looking for people to do things with. On the other hand, it's not perfect for everything. And there's a lot about the new website that's coming up that will actually fill in the blanks around creation and what have you. So I think there's a model around consumption in mobile that has to be paired with real value around creation and other kinds of activities. Probably the bottom of the iceberg is happening online, and a very important part of the experience comes together in those moments when people have mobile in their hands.
Well, for us, we're all about mobile. I mean, we believe that mobile is what's disrupting the video landscape today. With the tablet, in particular, leading the way, leading the charge as a form factor where people are watching more and more video. And the fact that they can now take this really high-powered device, watch video wherever they are, is really important to the disruption that's happening in video, because we're no longer slaves to our TV or a show at a specific time. These things have changed. Consumption is happening on a much broader scale than ever before. And so for us, we have been very focused on mobile. But again, it gets to that's where the consumption is happening now. That's where all the growth is too. And quite honestly, for us, it's the attack on the establishment a little bit. For us to succeed as the small guy, it makes sense for us to be on mobile.
What about you guys?
Yeah, on the event side, mobile is really, really important, obviously. We're still seeing about 20% of our traffic to Ticketfly to buy tickets is coming from mobile, but purchase is still in the mid-single digits. So you might not activate on mobile, but you may consume. So at the event, you can see, which of your friends are there. And so bringing people together, it's kind of like you might have registered for crowdsurfing, online, but you may be consuming the app, out and about. So it's very important in the live event space for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who was rocking a Motorola StarTAC feature phone until pretty recently, I've reluctantly embraced mobile as the future, and thankfully most of my colleagues are well ahead of me. But what we have found at StumbleUpon is that the way that people consume, and I'm sure it's probably the case for all of us here, the way that people consume content, at least through StumbleUpon on mobile devices, is very different. And even amongst mobile devices, it's different. So phones tend to, people using StumbleUpon want different types of content when they're using their phones than they do when they're using tablet devices, for example. It's much more lean back, entertainment-oriented content they're looking for with tablets. And that maps to time of day, which tends to peak on weekends and primetime hours during the week. And on phones, they're looking for more utilitarian, news-based information, which probably not coincidentally coincides with usage during commute hours on East and West Coast. So that's been interesting for us as well, and it's different from desktop.
So I guess this kind of ties into it. And I was hating on it earlier, but like gamifying something. Is that sort of, do you feel like that is, so I'm thinking about Foursquare, right? And how they really started off strong with the idea of the check-in, and now it seems that this is sort of something they're moving away from. Like, is having this sort of goal or challenge or reward system and like something that's crucial, or is there a different type of sort of rewarding that you can get people to come back to using your product, whether it's like a coupon or something like that?
I think you can get carried away with gamification, obviously, and it's easy to do that. I get hit up all the time from companies that are calling me to say, hey, if I have a platform that measures the number of tweets and incents kids to tweet out the URL to an event and they can earn points, and I'm like, it's definitely a feature without a business model. So we're looking at some of these same features, but connected to our overall platform. But we're going to start small. We're going to start with features that might not be gamification, but are still magical, and the user knows that the system is doing something. For example, having if my friend Mark II turns on Mark I by sharing a Facebook post about an upcoming music show here at the Independent on DeViz, and Mark I buys tickets, wouldn't it be great to send them both an email saying that link, just want to remind you that link, Mark II turned Mark I onto a great show, and now they're going together. Or you come to
Mark III.
They could meet a Mark III. They're replicating. So things like that is where we're going to start. We won't even we don't plan to surface up points or anything like that, but we want to make sure that we connect rewards to desired actions. Yeah. And if that's gamification, then I'm guilty, Mike.
Yeah, it's early for us, but right now, to keep the experience pure, we want people to be coming back into Squirrel watching video because they're engaged. and you have to be careful with incentives. I mean, it's really, gaming is about, okay, there's some sort of incentive there. Ideally want to keep our metrics clean and know that people are coming here because they're getting to videos that they care about, and sort of having people watch videos because they're going to earn some sort of special badge if they watch 3 Shogun movies or watch 10 viral videos on YouTube that day. I'm not sure that's a clean video experience or the one that we want to build. We want to build something that users are using because they're finding video that maps their interests, and they're happy users, and they're going to be engaged. And part of that is just the more they're using the product, the more we know we're doing something right. We're not. I think some people have effectively used gamification.
I just don't like the word. I don't mind like the practice of doing these things.
So
I
think
I totally screwed the whole.
It's helpful
game.
when you're trying to incent new behaviors. But people have been watching video for a long time, so they're pretty familiar with what they need to do. So.
Yeah, my head's still spinning from the Mark 1, Mark 2 example. I'll figure it out by the end of this panel. I think there are definitely... Just remember number 2. So there are definitely, I think we probably have all found that there are incentives inherent in every system, that, whether they're intentional or unintentional elements of gamification. In StumbleUpon, we know that people respond really well to finding out that people that they've shared content with through StumbleUpon have liked that content or shared it on to other people. So we're thinking about ways that we can surface those. It's not a badge per se, but it's just a way of giving people some positive reinforcement of some natural acts that happen in the course of stumbling, and that tends to breed more enthusiasm and engagement amongst users.
And for me, it represents a bunch of different issues. Having worked at my first startup in 1994, I'm actually really glad to see that over the years, people have gotten better at creating things that might be fun, and that they take into consideration things like psychology, and that I think as an industry, we've become much more metrics driven. I think those are all good things, and I think consumers really do enjoy a good payoff. To me, the question is kind of the empty calories question of like, there's a degree to which we should all be focused on building things that are as valuable as possible. And the question we have to ask ourselves when we gamify something or we make something addictive is there value being created here? Because if there is, there's going to be a habit to go along with it, and that's good because that's the way people are. On the other hand, it's a power tool used in the wrong way. It's going to be a bad habit, and it's going to have a large-scale negative impact. So I think there's a responsibility that comes along with wielding psychology and incentives and all that stuff.
So I'm thinking about the thing that everyone sort of plays with, and the question that's come up a bunch today, but the privacy stuff, right? So like I think your service is in particular something that would be a concern about, right? But at the same time, people have to be willing to volunteer a level of trust in their service, right? And then I think just broader, like the amount of information I'm willing to share to have these things tailored to my interests, right? So like it's like I think the argument is like the more you give me in terms of my data, or the more I give you in terms of my data, right, the better your service is going to be for me, right? But how do you sort of, at what point do I stop getting creeped out, or am I going to just start short of getting creeped out, And where do I trust you, and where am I going to stop trusting you?
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I think that at the core of what Couchsurfing happens to be, I know there's a lot of different points of view here, it is a network based on trust. And as the world has gotten more open and better connected and more verifiable, I can verify you on Facebook, I can look at your phone number, I can know that you have a credit card, I can do all those things. It changes the nature of what people are comfortable with and what have you. The system in general has been very private, but at the same time very open to other people that are interested in leveraging it. I think the trick comes down to the fact that it turns out, in the end, Facebook is not the answer to all questions. That there actually is a need.
It's heresy.
Hey, imagine that. There's not going to be just one service that has hundreds of millions of users. There are going to be multiple. And there are going to be services that actually solve different problems for people. My identity is different in different contexts. I need different things in different contexts. Just linking me up with the people that I actually know is not enough. And that's why we're all here. It's that it is still early days in social discovery, There's a lot of white space out there that's left to be filled in as technology becomes more responsible, more responsive, better at making the right connections and helping people. And so Couchsurfing has to just like everybody else, walk through with its billion page views a year and figure out how to move all of these folks into a world that's as open as possible, but serving the purpose of what Couchsurfing does, which is to connect people and build trusting, meaningful relationships.
Anyone else?
Well, for us, obviously, privacy, as I mentioned before, the ability to kind of turn it on and off. There's times that you want to share what you're watching with others, and there's times that you don't.
The video space is especially interesting. I think we were talking about social cam and Vidi, right? And like just sort of how they have risen to prominence in their auto sharing, and not even just them, but like just Facebook apps in general, right? Like you will share what you're doing, and it will, whether you really know it or not, and it propagates the spread of the app, but at the same time, so I was using Airtime yesterday, right? And I noticed that when I started talking with certain people, it shared to my timeline the names of these people that I was meeting, right? And that weirded me out. I mean, it weirded me out on their behalf, right? So you may be growing your user base, but are you shooting yourself in the foot ultimately?
Yeah, for us, we want to keep it more about the recommendations that we can give you. So, our personalization or our approach to making a better experience or giving that user a good payoff is, hey, did I get you to a video that I care about? So rather than you're seeing some sharings of videos that, people might not have wanted shared, due to the auto sharing. I think some of that's going to change. We heard earlier that they're doing a 10-second pause on that and making you the devs required now to be able to delete it from your timeline before everybody in your Facebook can see it. But for us, we want to pay off around the recommendation because we want you to come to Squirrel because we give you videos that you care about. So for us to go the opposite direction, we'd lose trust, right? And I think trust is really important with your users. They have to come in and feel like, okay, one, I can comfortably share here with people. If I don't want to share, I can control that experience. And then if I do give you information and I do things like videos inside your system, you're going to reward me by giving me better recommendations. And if you can show that to users, they're going to give you that information. They will rate content. They will do those things that you want them to do if you have a positive feedback loop. That's our belief.
Yeah, I mean, we just sort of look at the market and see that there are very few, if any, companies that have really gotten to any sustainable scale by flouting user privacy. And I think given where we are as a company, and I think where all of us are, it may produce some short-term gains by pushing the envelope on user privacy, but it's just not a sustainable strategy. I think the sort of Google mantra of do no evil is a good long-term strategy at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think in the event space, particularly larger entertainment events, music events, we're blessed with a product that people generally are open to sharing and talking about. So fortunately, we're blessed with a space that's less sensitive to, I want to share this, I don't want to share that. So, but we still want to be permission driven, and it should be very easy. If you're, we have a lot of famous people that buy tickets from our platform. They're probably not going to want to let everyone in the stadium know where they're going to be sitting. So, we're going to have it permission driven. So, like Mark I or Mark II, very famous people.
So this might be more applicable to you, Tony, but Google introduced this Google Plus Places the other day, right, where they took their Zagat or Zagat or however you say it purchase and do you know how you say it? Zagat?
How do we say
I'm not going to try.
Okay.
Zagat.
Because
they ran a whole ad
smart
campaign. The cat,
Okay.
I believe it was the cat.
I'm obviously
right?
not a
New
classy
York.
guy and don't use that sort
Zagat.
of rating system.
We definitely have learned at least one thing here today. So.
There we go. But
My job here is done.
the sort of concept of rating something versus liking something, right? So you have your Zagat rating and it's like, okay, well, they rated it 30 stars or however many things, but does that have any more bearing on something than my brother liking this cheeseburger? You know, I mean, it's like what is your input on that?
So it's interesting. So you might have seen a blog post recently about social proof. There's a good one that just went around recently. And I think that that's what comes to mind for me, is just the idea that these systems that come along, whether they're star mechanisms in Photos or Zagat's, or on any TripAdvisor or what have you, have this problem. Part of it is tragedy of the commons, where it drives everybody to the same damn thing, and then everybody's doing it, and it's no longer good anymore for the reasons that it started off being good. And then the other problem being that it just doesn't really surface anything that's actually unique. It basically takes the least common denominator, potentially. And so, I think that part of the issue has to be that you have to, like in our case with places, you have to believe that the world is a lot bigger than the Zagat's Guide. That there are way more cool things to do in the world than can possibly show up in a book that's published and designed to serve somebody's needs as a business and what have you. This is kind of the ethos of what the internet is all about, right? For better or for worse, it gives a lot of voice to a lot of people. Not always, So Couchsurfing is kind of similar, and we're going to launch a Places app this summer, actually, that will just totally blow the doors open so that everybody who, we have 1 million places to stay all over the world across our, you can call them couches, but they are actually people. And those people know across 230 countries where to go, what to do. And some of it's in the, in that guide, but there's a bunch of little things that we all do in San Francisco or wherever we come from that we didn't find in a guide. We found through a person, and the reason that's relevant is that it's right this year, next year it'll be different, and that's natural, and that's kind of how things work. So I think that's where things wind up.
We're just about out of time. If you want to get a parting thought in there real quick. Just
that I'm reminded of the shortcomings of most current rating systems when I waltz into a highly rated Zagat restaurant with my 3 small kids and am met with blank stares from all the adult diners who were not expecting young children to show up. So I think that fundamentally highlights that that these broad-based rating systems just don't generally produce very good personalized results for people, and there need to be better solutions for those.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's just you have to have more signals than just one. You have to take other things into consideration than just one, and I think that's one of the things that we look at is, not just pinning it all on one signal like a rating or a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but, there's a lot of other signals to take into consideration before you make that recommendation.
Right on. All right. Thanks, guys, for coming on.